to address some of the things that you guys have been always asking me to talk about, or questions that you wanted me to answer. This video isn't going to be a direct response to the video that is presumably exposing me, quote unquote. Just a little side tangent here. An exposed video is in the name of the video. It's to expose someone for something that no one really knows that they've done. Unfortunately for you, unfortunately for everyone else, I actually leave all my dirty laundry out for everyone to see, so all the information in there isn't exactly, not public knowledge. So kind of takes away the whole point of labeling it an exposed video, but hey, whatever floats your boat, I guess. Anyway, and of course, it's going to highlight some of the other things that also comes from that video. This is like I said, it's not a direct response to that video. It's more indirectly, to be honest, because some of it in that video isn't exactly controversial. Like, some of it in there is just kind of like put in there just to be in there. But I will be indirectly talking about some of them, but mainly in my own life, because I want to put a more broad stroke over what was talked about in that video. So without further ado, so there actually are a few points in the video that I did want to cover. Some of them, are obviously ones that just kind of need to be addressed because it's, clear misinformation, and I don't exactly want people to go around thinking that, even though technically it should be pretty obvious that that's not the case, but sometimes we all can't exactly share the same subcontext or unconscious how do you put it? Unconscious context that's not the case. Anywho, one of them being OP power scaling in Alphatale. Yes, I understand it's there. It's troublesome. It gets annoying sometimes, and I've already made my own complaints about it before in the past. I told plenty of people that I don't want to have it be so overtly in your face, and I have made strides to make sure that isn't the case. I've done as much possible work as I could to make sure that that's no longer as in your face as possible. I think, though, if I was going to, put my own hat in the ring there for a moment, that I don't take Alphatale for being incredibly power scale heavy. I mean, it definitely has its power scaling heavy moments, but I think that you can only get so far with that being your main crutch. Like, I know a lot of people tend to say, like, if everyone loves it because of the power scaling. Well, I mean, if that's the case, then why didn't True Godverse work out? That should have been something that a lot of people would have loved if that was the case. Power scaling can only get you so far. Like a lot of things. You can only have so much of one thing in the story before it begins to become, bloated and undigestible. Again, pointing to True Godverse as an example for that as well. No big call out or bashing on them. They did what they could. The rewrites for the verse after that, and people made their concerns was pretty obvious. The next part I want to talk about is Ten no Kami apparently being called a child. I mean, in the aspects of beings, I guess ? But no, not really. Ten no Kami has never been shown to be like a kid or a child. They're like like way older than the Undertale multiverse in a whole. They're older than Reality 6, actually, if I'm not mistaken. So Ten no Kami being a child, no, never been the case. I don't think I've ever depicted them as that. It'd be weird to depict them as that, especially. But no, I don't. No, Ten no Kami is not a child. Another thing from the video that needed to be covered is copying characters, I think is what they brought up. God forbid if anyone makes an AU, right? That's just horrible. I think that point in the video just didn't need to be there. Like, I know I'm talking about a few things in here that obviously people, tend to have problems with. I don't know if anyone really has a problem with Tenokami though. That's kind of an interesting topic. But some of the topics in the video just really didn't, need to be there. I think for a video that serious, it needed to have things in it that were more focused on the central focuses of that video. If anything, it just kind of like talks about like some really subjective parts in Alphatale that anyone could have an opinion about. The idea of having something like that in a video, or having a video talking about, the bad parts of someone or something, is to highlight that it is overtly horrible, it's overtly bad. The other parts in the video that I'm going to talk about here are overtly bad and should be addressed. Everything I've talked about so far has literally no reason to be in that video. From the OP scaling talk to Tenokami apparently being portrayed as a child, which again has never been the case, and the copying of stanzas or characters. Like, I'm gonna go on it right now, that's stupid. It makes no sense to me. I don't mean to be really harsh about it, but God forbid anyone ever wants to make a variant of their own of something. Like, God forbid someone wants to make, like, what is it? Like their own version of what Undertale 2 would be like, or Player Tale, Underplayer, that's the name. Underplayer, or Azrael Reborn, or I think it's Dreamer Reborn. Yeah, it's Dreamer Reborn. That kind of stuff. That kind of stuff is like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I guess I'm just baffled by the topic that was covered there. Again, in a video about that, about wanting to shed a light on something horrible, there shouldn't be any subjectivity in it. I just don't see the purpose behind it. And I apologize if I'm stammering and stuttering a lot. And I don't really make scripts for these videos. Anyway, those are just some of the topics I wanted to cover. The OP Sans or OP scaling stuff, shouldn't be in there, but it's there. I've already talked about it. Shouldn't have something so subjective in there. Same thing with Tenokami's. I literally have never heard of that argument or controversy, quote unquote, ever brought into my light. If that was something that people were actually legitimately thinking about, I think that would have came around to my ears. In fact, I think I might have actually gotten a question about that a long time ago. I'm not too sure. I get a ton of questions, as you're going to see later on at the later half of this video. Also, apologies if you hear a bell in the background. It's my cat. I can't exactly keep her from running around my recording space. And of course, finally, the copying characters or other thing they talk about in there. It's, like I said, it doesn't need to be in there. It makes no sense. Everyone copies off everyone. We're literally a part of a fandom that has people literally making copies of prominent characters from the main series. I don't really see the problem with it. Like, maybe your topic should be more about the respect that's given to said characters. That would have been a topic. I'll probably talk about that actually a little later on, because that was something that someone did ask me about, and I think that's actually worth more of a discussion than just, well, why does he copy people's characters, or why does he, not copy, but why does he make these versions of people's characters? See, that's a topic of discussion. Anyway, I'm going to get into the first part of this video officially, or at least the second part of this video officially now. So let's get right into it, shall we? Now, I did see this slightly covered in the, or at least I saw a screenshot of it slightly covered in the video. Again, I'm not trying to make a direct response to said video. I'm more trying to talk about it indirectly in a method that allows me to do a more broader stroke on things. One of the things I want to talk about, and it's not talked about too much now, but I did want to air it out a little bit here because I felt like it was really worth it, and I still think there are some people who kind of talk about it still. I haven't really heard too much about it, even outside of, the Discord and the community posts. I don't really hear people talking about it, but I do want to talk about it, and that is the cosmetic mango situation, or the Alphatale Road to Destruction comic dub that was gonna come about, but ended up having some issues in its production. So one of the things I kind of saw, and again, you know, just like the rest of this video, if you feel like I'm kind of doing something a little wrong, I've never been afraid of people fact checking me. So if you hear or see anything in this video that you don't think is entirely true or accurate, feel free to fact check me about it. But anyway, I saw in the semi sort of official, I don't know, however you want to put it, a doc about me that supposedly they were trying to tie me to saying that I wanted to add in Steelheart into the Road to Destruction adaptation, or like I wanted to or that was my main complaint, that the artist wouldn't adapt the Road to Destruction, wouldn't adapt Steelheart into it. First of all, no, that was not my main complaint. My main complaint was the fact that the Alpha Mother's character wasn't being drawn as she should have been. As you all well know, Alpha Mother is a huge nudist, probably like at this point a professional nudist. Any chance she can get to like basically strip off her clothes, she will do that like instantly. Whether it's fighting or when she's working out, whatever it is, she just does that. And one of the things in the Road to Destruction was that, you know, it shows her doing that, and that, you know, she's kind of like naked around lots of people, her own kids, and Frisk and Kara, and lots of other folks like that. That was the main, you know, drawback. That was the main thing that a lot of people, or not a lot of people, goodness, I'm just like talking. That's kind of what these videos are for. But that was the main complaint between me and Cosmetic Mango. Now, no offense to Cosmetic Mango, they're their own person, they have their own morals, you know, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, I hired them to do a job. I hired them to do an adaptation of the work that I was paying them to do. Now, granted, there obviously are those arguments that, you know, well, couldn't you just, you know, make a compromise for it? And in all seriousness, nothing in Road to Destruction is incredibly jarring. Like, compared to the rest of the series, even to like the puppet books or Steelheart as well, if you want to, you know, do an obvious, you know, comparison. Compared to Steelheart, Road to Destruction is the most tamest story out of the whole collection of Alphatale storylines. So I didn't particularly see a reason in dumbing it down, especially when a lot of what happens in it, you know, like I said before, isn't that bad. I don't consider it to be that bad at all. Maybe, you know, if anyone wants to go through it and see, oh wait, but there's this part, then that's fine. But as I said, I didn't see it as that bad. I felt honestly that the artist just wasn't trying, that was trying to like skimp out on what I had paid them to do. I didn't think that was okay, because I wanted the book to be adapted as it should have been adapted in. Really sucks that the project didn't go through, but you know, it is what it is. Second part that I want to talk about, Steelheart. The Steelheart being adapted into the comic in its fullest. No, that's not the case. As I said before, I believe they were attempting to say that I was arguing for Steelheart to be adapted in, which again wasn't the case. I didn't want Steelheart to be. I wouldn't have had Steelheart completely in its fullest adaptation, entirely in comic fashion. There's only so much you can really show in a physical visual medium, right? Because even for, like, let's put out a few examples, right? Even for Berserk or DC or Marvel, you can only have so much shown in a comic. Even in Invincible too, if you've ever seen, if all my Invincible lovers out there who've actually read the comic, you know which part I'm talking about. But even for like those series as well, that are also pretty dark and heavy in terms of themes and events that go on, to only show so much. I would have never asked Cosmetic Mango to just go ahead and adapt on like every single piece of the horrible things that happened in Steelheart. Would have never been the case. That's just not what I would have asked them to do. I legitimately don't think that even would have been allowed onto the platforms that I would have posted it on if they even agreed. So yeah, that's one of the parts I wanted to cover on. I think that the cosmetic situation was very unfortunate. I think if maybe a compromise was, talked about more between the two of us, we probably would have a actual, adaptation of Road to Destruction right now. But as I said, some things, they come and they go. It's unfortunate. It happened. And now, the only thing we can look forward to now is the rewrite of Road to Destruction. But that is the first topic I want to talk about. And I hope that does shed some clarity on that piece that was talked about in the video. Not really talked about, but kind of hinted at. I kind of wanted to go over it because, as I said, not a lot of people talk about it, and I want to shed some light on that piece as well. So take away from this part of the video as you will, but that is something I want to share. Now let's move on to the next. So now we get to the part of the video where everyone's probably waiting for me to talk about, and that of course is the Little Tail is no more incident. Now, I know for a good portion of people, they, have their own thoughts on the matter, and as do others as well. Surprisingly pretty double-sided, actually. But I want to end that right now by stating out, like a lot of people have said, it should have happened. Little Tail is no more. Had a lot of potential to do something, but I didn't meet that potential. I wasn't able to portray what I needed to. In a sense, I suppose I had felt that. That's a good way to put it, really. In the broad view of Alphatale, a lot of people tend to say that people are conditioned to certain things, and they're conditioned to a lot of the gore and a lot of the violence and terror that happens in it. And I suppose in a sense, I had been conditioned as well to expect people to be able just to, accept those things as well. But that's only when they're portrayed correctly. And I did not do that. Not in the slightest. If you've ever seen, or read Alpha Rune, which honestly, again, you should check it out if you are interested in seeing that. In Alpha Rune, he's portrayed perfectly. Just, maybe not perfectly, but way, way better than what's done in Alphatale. I guess you could say, conditioned or given the idea that, people would just see it and they'd be like, wow, that's terrible, infected, just an awful guy. But I was wrong. It shouldn't have happened the way it did. There were definitely plenty of things I could have done differently, and like a good portion of people have said, I wasn't exactly thinking. And I've done my share, and continue to do my share, to do better and to make amends for what that's done for people. I know for a lot of people that's probably the weight or the thing that broke the camel's back. That's the thing that ended it all. It's no more, it's all over, why follow him after, why follow him after that? But I would say, if you continue to look to me, then just wait and see. I'm doing things, making strides to rekindle that flame that once was. For some people, that flame's not out at all, but for me, I think it's dwindled quite a bit. And I want to do better. As I said before, I want to make amends, as I've said. Now, the big question that some people have said, and I'm probably gonna show a little bit of people asking the question. No one, not really anyone, username or anything like that, but I will share it. Why did I make it? Now, the notable answer, and the one I go back to, always, because it's the base answer to the question, is I wanted to show Infected in his fullest and most brutal cruelty. And while definitely did show him being cruel and horrible, was portrayed in a very tasteless manner, or it was just so jarring and so overtly in your face that it almost just felt like, a classic jump scare. Yeah, you've heard that phrase before, right? Nothing burger, in a sense. If you've ever heard that phrase before, that's kind of what it felt like. And looking back on it now, I am glad it's gone, because it did no service to the character truly, and I feel like there are better stories, such as Survival, which if you know is coming out this Sunday. The first 3 chapters are going to be here. It's a 10-chapter storyline. The first 2 chapters drop tomorrow. Survival will do far better for Infected than that story ever could have done. The thing, and to go off a little bit here, I think personally the thing that draws people to Infected as a character is the nuance and complexity of who he is. And that's something that was tarnished when that story was made. It made him out to be a very in-your-face, classic, I do bad things because who else is going to do it, right? Kind of shit. And that's not what I want. That's not what I want all for the character. So, Little Tail is no more, just had no place here. It was a concept, it was an idea, but ultimately it failed. And, goddamn, really, Mitz? Anyway, that's just my cat, sorry. Anyway, the thing about it though is that in a sense, in some way, I'm glad that it happened, because for a long while I was in the clouds, right? I was in the clouds for quite a while that was going on. I had been doing a lot. Granted, there was, obviously, there's a few naysayers, a few people out there that, obviously won't like my work to save their lives. But, just to talk objectively, I was in the clouds, I was in a mindset to where, the Fate Seeker storyline was doing pretty good for the most part. And a lot of people were enjoying themselves. A lot of people were having fun. Alphatale was still in, the limelight of things. And so I just felt like I could just throw out anything. And I'm glad I got hit with that wall, that brick wall that said, now hold on. You can't just make anything. I'm glad I was shown that. Because it was a message to me and a message to others as well. It was a message to me that I have to take more care and be more sensitive when it comes to certain things that I want to portray in a story. And that's why certain stories that I look up to myself are often taken with more, not taken, but are given more love and are given more support and appreciation because on how they handle those themes. And it was a message to others as well, other writers out there as well, that they can do the same thing too. To be direct, there were other authors and writers out there that tried to follow in my own footsteps and felt like doing what I do is the way on how to do it, right? That's how you get big, right? You gotta write the stuff that people don't really want to see. But that's the thing though. They don't want to see it. Of course not. But they want to, how do I put it? They want to be made aware of it, if you get my meaning. To use an example, when the Invincible comic came out, By the way, big spoilers, by the way. If you don't want to spoil for Invincible, I'd say probably skip over to maybe like 10 minutes, probably. But as an example, in the Invincible comic, there's a part where the Viltrumite Anissa comes down to Mark Grayson, Invincible, and forces herself onto him because she doesn't want to mate with anyone else, because Thrag at that point was telling with the population of the Viltrumites were low after Mark and Nolan, and I forget the other guy. I think he's also a traitor like Nolan, but where they all basically blew up the planet Viltrum, and then the Viltrumites came to Earth, and Thrag was like, we gotta repopulate the planet, and we're gonna have some Viltrumites go through here. And Nissa wasn't having it. She didn't like anyone there, and so she forced herself on Mark, and he had refused her. Not once, not twice, 3 times in a row. She didn't care. And it was handled with such care and such delicacy that it's legitimately one of my favorite arcs in the story, because we get to see just how real that is for him. And it brings to light it brings to light the focus on female on male violence and the abuse that men take from women at times. And it's such a good arc. I guess my only complaint about it was that it just didn't feel really fulfilling in the end. I would have really liked to see like Anissa actually get real consequences for what happened. But anyway, that's an example of it being handled properly. Of a grim situation, of a grim topic being handled very, very well. And I didn't do that. I should have done that. Or maybe that was a sign that I just am not capable of doing that. At least not yet. But it's one of the things that I wanted to succeed in. I failed at it. But sometimes you need to fail at stuff. At anything, really. You need to fail. Just to get yourself a chance to know how you can succeed next time. And granted, before that, I had rarely failed. I had a few blotches, sure, but I rarely failed. Like I said, I was above the clouds. But then, lightning struck. And I was given a very, very clear sight of reality. And I needed that most of all. I've already said my apologies for what happened on a post on Discord, but I also feel like this has been a long, part right here just to get to this point. But I want to, as well in here, apologize. Alphatale is a series that brought a lot of people together and still even does, even after what happened, which maybe is a sign that maybe I'm not done with it, or it's not done with me just yet. But if I want this to keep going, I need to be more self-aware. I need to be more open to what people think on certain things. I sometimes allow my ego just to fly ahead of me. And maybe that's because of all I've outlasted. And it's because of all that I've done, because of where I am. But I can't just apologize. As much as I want to, as much as I have, all I can do is show you all that I can be better and will do better. And that's what I will do. That's what I am doing now. With stories like Undertale H, Alpharoon, and Weird Guys, I'm going to do better. I will do better. That's a promise to you all. And that is the final serious topic I wanted to cover in this line. If you've only came here for that, then this is the end of the video for you.